I'll just start with my next unit, that is shared preference. Before I go into shared preference, I'll just let you know what actually this is about, because maybe the name would be a new one to you. You know that whenever we see some programmings or something like applications, web browsers, you want to store some data. So what you will be like doing is you will be like using some storage where you want to store some data so that you can use it in the later stages. For that is the purpose of the data storage. So in Android, data storages can be done in different ways. One is shared preference is one of the method where you can use to store the data. Second one is you can store the data in the internal memory. Internal memory is nothing but each and every application will be given. You would have seen in your mobile itself, you will have two kinds of memories. One is internal memory and one is external memory. Like this, each and every application will be given an internal memory. I think so it is like 14 MB to 16 MB of internal space will be given to each and every application. So either you can store it in applications internal memory, or you can store the data in an external storage. For example, your SD card or inbuilt external memory. So you can store it either in these storage external storages. So that is the third method. Fourth method is you have an inbuilt database, that is SQLite database. You know that Android provides you an inbuilt database available. That is an SQLite database. So either you can use an SQLite database to store your data. So that is another method. The fifth method is you can, through a network connectivity, you can connect to your external server where you can store data. So that is another method. So like this, we have different data storages. So that is what we are going to see. First, we are going to see about the shared preference. Shared preference is nothing but you can pass the data or you can store the data in form of a file. So this file will be stored in the user's internal memory itself. It will be available to the user's internal memory itself. You can share the data between your application wherever you want to share the data inside your complete application. You can share this data using the shared preference concept. It will create a file in the internal memory and you will be like able to use it anytime whenever your application is open. So that is the purpose of the shared preferences. So what I'll do is we'll go into it. Android, as I told you, provides many ways of storing data of an application. One of the way is called shared preferences. Shared preference allows you to save and retrieve data in the form of key value pair. I didn't mention you that. So it will store the data in a form of a key value pair. Each and every value what you are storing, it will have a key value. Through the key value pair only, we will be like storing it. And through the key value pair only, we will be like retrieving the value. So that is how the shared preference will store the value inside the internal memory. In this unit, we will be like seeing how to store it and how to retrieve the value from the shared preference. So the shared preference, you can store and retrieve data of your application using Android shared preferences. Android shared preferences allows you to save and retrieve data in the form of a key value pair. Android stores shared preferences settings as an XML file in the shared preference folder under. This is where the data will be stored. That is inside the internal memory. Each and every package will be, each and every application will be having a path called as data slash. Inside data, there will be another folder called as data, and inside that there is another package name called application package. So inside that you will be like having your shared preference file. Shared preferences is application specific. That is, whichever application creates, only that application can access. No other application can access this shared preference. In order to use the shared preference, you have to call a method get shared preference and you have to pass the method name and the mode. That is whether it is it is a readable mode or writable mode, like that. We have to specify the mode to it. So that will make sure that it will return you a shared preference value reference. So that reference, using that reference, we can write and we can read the data from the shared preferences. So for example, this is how we will be like using it. Shared preferences object equals get shared preferences. My preference is nothing but you will give the file name and the mode, whether it is a private mode or a public mode, you can give the mode to it. So this is the different modes of shared preferences. Mode append. This will append the new preference with the already existing preference. Suppose if you have an already existing preference, you want to append some data to it, you can specify mode as append. Then mode multiprocess. This will check for modification of preferences even if the shared preference instance has already been loaded. If there is any modification that you want to do, you can do it. Mode private is by setting this mode, the file can only be accessed using calling application. That is, only can be accessed by the particular application that has been created. Mode world readable. That is, will give only the read preferences. It won't give the write preferences. Writable is, it will give you the write permission. It won't give you the read permission. So that is how you can specify the different modes for the shared preferences. So to save the data to the shared preference, first we have to open the shared preference file in a mode called as editor mode. So through that only we will be like able to put the string into a key value pair. You can see this. To open the shared preference in an editor mode, we have a method called as edit. This will open into an editor mode. Then to put the values, we'll use put string method, which will have a key value pair, which will, the first parameter is a key name and the next is a value. Finally, to store the data into the shared preference file, we should use this commit method. So this commit method will make sure that the transaction is completely done and the shared preference will have this particular value. To get the values from the shared preference, first, before accessing it, you have to check whether the key name is available in the shared preference or not. If it is not available, no need of accessing it. Otherwise, it will throw you an exception to it. So before accessing it, you should make sure that whether it is already available. If it is available, we can use getString method to get the value by passing the key name. If the key name is not having any value, you can also have a default value if the value is not available. So that also you can specify. I'll just show you in the application when we are going to do it. So this is how we can access a shared preference value and you can use it in your application. So some inbuilt methods that are available are like apply, commit, then you can clear the shared preference, remove the shared key value from a shared preference, put string, put in. Shared preference is actually used for primitive data types like float, int, string, double. So only it is used for primitive data types. So you can't store an object or something like that. It is only used for a primitive data type.